Neama Rahmani, former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers, with me tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
How likely is it that these brothers will be freed, and why?
It's very likely they're going to be free, and you're seeing the perfect storm of politics and public relations. The Netflix series Monsters raised a lot of awareness about the sexual abuse the brothers suffered at the hands of their father, Jose, and how their mother was complicit and helped cover it up. Our district attorney in Los Angeles, where I lived, and I lived my whole life in Southern California, is in the middle of a highly contested election right now. And there's a lot of support for Lyle and Eric, and it makes for good politics. That's why he's recommending their release less than 2 weeks before the election.
But has anything changed in terms of new evidence coming forward, Neama?
Well, there are two key pieces of evidence that have come forward. First is an allegation by someone named Roy Rosello. He was a member of the Mexican boy band Menudo, and he's come out and he said that Jose, who was the head of RCA Records, sexually abused him. And there was a letter that Eric wrote to his cousin 8 months before the murders where he documented the abuse. So this gives support to the allegations that the brothers were indeed sexually abused. Now, the judge in the second trial where they were convicted kept most of this evidence out. That's the argument in favor of them being released after serving 35 years.
But even if the board approves their release, it doesn't necessarily mean this will happen, does it?
No, so the district attorney could have gone in a couple of different directions. The first would have been to recommend a sentence of time served. He did not do that. Instead, he recommended a sentence of 50 to life, 25 years for Jose, 25 years for Kitty. Now, because the brothers were under the age of 26 under California law, they're considered youthful offenders and they're eligible for parole after 25 years. But that means they still have to go before
And
and
so
the board can grant or reject their request. And even if they do, California Governor Gavin Newsom can still reject that recommendation.
So what happens next? What's the timeline here?
So the timeline, now the judge in the case, Judge William Ryan, he has 30 days to set the case for a hearing. And the judge can also reject the recommendation if the judge rules that the brothers pose an unreasonable risk to the public. So they're not out of the woods yet, or not out of prison yet. They still have to go through a few hurdles: the judge, the parole board, and potentially the governor.
And would this have happened without Netflix?
Absolutely not. We've seen time and time again where a documentary can dramatically affect a legal case. Just this week, the BBC documentary on Jeffries, the former Abercrombie CEO, that was instrumental in getting him charged with sex trafficking. We've seen R. Kelly, Britney Spears, Bob Durst. The power of a documentary can truly change the course of a legal case, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. Every prosecutor in the United States is either elected or appointed by someone who is. So politics does play a role in all of this.
Okay. Neama, thank you very much indeed. That's Neama Rahmani, who's a former federal prosecutor and president of West Coast Trial Lawyers.